So why do you think Epstein became almost like the central figure for all of this corrupt global elite meta cartel?
Well, he's just a microcosm of it, really. But I think
is it his own perversion?
He became too exposed, I think, especially after his first arrest. And as he described it, he became radioactive. But he had, before been able to move through all these different...
Control is slipping, and someone powerful is scrambling to keep it. Everyone thought Oprah Winfrey sat above the mess, untouchable and clean until the pattern starts blinking red and refusing to shut up. This was supposed to be settled history, harmless proximity, old noise. It isn't. What just hits the wire is not a rumor, but a chain reaction. A rival speaking openly again, a documentary fallout still spreading, and a silence that feels deliberate instead of dignified. Sean Combs is locked down while threatening legal retaliation. A Netflix series stays live, and 50 Cent publicly reacts as if he knows exactly how this ends. Court filings, release dates shifting to late May 2028, footage described as stolen but aired anyway, and accusations of career shutdowns resurface all at once. Oprah's name is not on the charges, yet it keeps appearing near the damage. That math doesn't balance. When power survives every blast radius, it stops looking like luck and starts looking like design. And the next break threatens reputations that were never meant to crack.
You have a couple of pets as well, a dog and a cat with interesting names, to say the least.
Yeah. That's Oprah.
That's Oprah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The story tightens around Sean Combs because his situation refuses to stay contained, and every move he makes drags more people into the light. He is currently held at a low-security facility in New Jersey, sentenced to 30 months after avoiding the most explosive charges, but still facing dozens of civil complaints across multiple states. On December 2nd, a 4-part Netflix series drops anyway, packed with behind-the-scenes footage that his team immediately labels stolen and illegal. Within hours, a cease and desist letter circulates, accusing the streamer of corporate retaliation and warning that lawsuits are being weighed. A spokesperson confirms he is still pondering legal action, while his release date quietly shifts again, now set for late May 2028. On paper, it looks like standard damage control. But industry sources point out that Combs is not just fighting a platform, he is fighting narrative control, and that is where things start to bleed outward. The series stays live, the footage stays public, and the people who once orbited his empire begin reappearing in conversations they never expected to re-enter. Here's where it stops making sense. Combs' team insists the project is a hit job, yet Netflix responds with unusual confidence, saying the material is legally obtained and not tied to any prior negotiations. They even reference past courtroom wins over similar claims. That detail lands heavily inside the industry because it signals preparation, not panic. Curtis Jackson, better known as 50 Cent, is named as an executive producer, and although he claims no creative control, his presence alone reframes the fight as personal. He reacts publicly to news that Combs' sons plan their own controlled series for a rival network in 2026, posting a short reaction that reads like a warning rather than curiosity. People close to the situation say this is not about entertainment anymore, it is about who gets to speak last. When Combs' lawyers file an appeal trashing the trial judge and painting him as a philanthropist unfairly treated, insiders quietly note the language feels familiar, like someone who expects sympathy to work. But sympathy is not spreading. Silence is. As Combs' legal posture hardens, another pattern resurfaces alongside it, one that has nothing to do with him directly and everything to do with who survives fallout. Every time his name trends, Oprah Winfrey's name follows, not because of charges, but because of proximity and history. Industry veterans whisper that this is not coincidence. It is memory reactivating. People remember who shared stages, who endorsed projects, who appeared at events, and who never faced consequence when alliances collapsed. In the middle of the documentary noise, old interviews start circulating again, including long-standing grievances from artists who say a single closed door from Oprah changed their trajectory. 50 Cent's comments from years ago about being denied her platform over his music resurface and spread fast, framed not as bitterness but as precedent. He once described her show as confirmation of success, something he was permanently blocked from. Now, as Combs fights to reclaim his voice, the contrast sharpens. One man is locked away while threatening lawsuits. Another figure, once adjacent to his world, remains publicly serene.
The idea that there would be a list does defy common sense for any common criminal. Why would you maintain your own evidentiary criminality? But to Jason Chaffetz's point, that doesn't mean there aren't clients. Just because there might not be a list doesn't mean there are not clients. And Ghislaine Maxwell could be put to the test on naming the names, creating the list after the fact of people that she saw.
That contrast is exactly what keeps insiders talking. Oprah does not comment on Combs. She does not need to. But people close to several production houses say her silence reads as strategy, not distance. This is not the first time powerful men collapse while she remains untouched. Harvey Weinstein's convictions still hang in the background of every conversation, especially after Singer Seal publicly accuses Oprah of knowing about Weinstein's behavior for decades and doing nothing. Rose McGowan follows with her own statements calling Oprah fake and accusing her of protecting a corrupt power structure. These claims are not new, but they gain weight when replayed against the current implosion. Sources say executives are privately asking why some relationships are recast as coincidence, while others are labeled complicity. Oprah's past statements expressing shock after revelations surface feel increasingly rehearsed to critics, especially when compared to how aggressively she once condemned selected figures. The pattern is not accusation, it is asymmetry, and asymmetry breeds suspicion. The whispers grow louder when people start connecting this moment to a much older scandal that never fully settled. In 2007, Oprah opens a prestigious school in South Africa meant to empower young students. Within a year, a dorm matron faces multiple counts of inappropriate behavior involving minors. Oprah flies in, apologizes publicly, fires leadership, and promises reform. The official narrative closes there, but rumors never do. Years later, additional incidents surface, including investigations into student conduct and a shocking discovery involving a newborn found on campus. None of this leads back to Oprah legally, yet conspiracy theories explode anyway, fueled by the same question that lingers now. How does chaos repeatedly erupt under her banner without touching her reputation? Industry insiders say this school becomes a reference point whenever accusations of cover-ups are discussed, not because of proven wrongdoing, but because of how efficiently the story disappears afterward. And then there is John of God, the Brazilian spiritual healer Oprah once praised on her show, calling his work inspiring. Years later, he is convicted of abusing hundreds of women who sought healing from him. Oprah issues a statement expressing sympathy for victims and hope for justice, but critics note the timing again. Praise first, condemnation later. When this history collides with the present moment, it reframes silence as pattern. Add to that the reopening of public interest in Jeffrey Epstein as heavily redacted files are released in December 2025, and the environment becomes combustible. Epstein's documents show elite social circles, missing pages, and names withheld under legal justification. Oprah is not accused of involvement, but she is discussed in the same online ecosystems where questions about protected elites dominate. People start drawing lines not from evidence, but from repetition.
Anything wrong, they're suddenly going to be in the spotlight. And that's just a kind of a strange scenario that we're finding ourselves in. As to why they released it, I mean, look, the grand jury materials, I think, were kind of properly protected by a judge who said, no, it's not enough just that the world's really excited and wants to know kind of scurrilous details about Epstein and Maxwell. The judge, I think, properly respected the statutory protections we have.
That's when the story starts to bend. What was once dismissed as unrelated grievances now stacks into something heavier. Katt Williams goes on record accusing Oprah, alongside other powerful figures, of being a gatekeeper who decides who thrives and who fades. He frames it as structural, not personal, suggesting influence that operates quietly behind contracts and casting decisions. His comments spread rapidly, amplified by fans who now reinterpret past controversies through that lens. Industry sources say casting rooms and boardrooms are suddenly re-examining old decisions, wondering how many careers stalled after private disagreements with her circle. The absence of lawsuits against Oprah is cited as proof of innocence by some, proof of power by others. No one speaks on record, but the shift is palpable. By now, the Combs documentary feels less like the center of the storm and more like the trigger that reopens everything. His appeal filing, his threats against Netflix, his portrayal as a victim of overreach all mirror language used by other fallen moguls before him. The difference is what happens next. Combs is isolated. His sons attempt to regain narrative control with their own series announcement, and even that is met with public skepticism from rivals. Meanwhile, Oprah remains publicly unbothered, her brand intact, her projects untouched. That contrast fuels the most dangerous question of all. Not who committed what, but who is allowed to survive exposure. As insiders quietly admit, the industry is less afraid of scandal than it is of imbalance. And right now, the imbalance is becoming impossible to ignore. What unsettles people now is not a single accusation, but how neatly older conflicts slide into the current moment. Industry figures who once dismissed complaints as personality clashes start re-examining them as coordinated outcomes. When Monique describes how her career stalls after refusing unpaid promotional demands, insiders say the chilling part is not the money, it is how fast doors close afterward. Casting conversations change tone. Invitations stop arriving. Calls go unanswered. No threats are made, no contracts are broken, and nothing actionable ever lands on paper. People close to her insist this is coincidence, yet veterans privately admit the same warning circulates quietly. Once you are labeled difficult by the wrong person, the system does the rest. That framing resurfaces now because it mirrors what others describe. No confrontation, no scandal, just disappearance. In a business built on access, removal is punishment enough.
Getting paid a fraction of the cost. I'm tired of hearing my sisters say the same thing over and over.
The same dynamic appears in how public accountability is distributed. Oprah's voice carries enormous weight when she chooses to use it, especially in moments involving powerful men accused of dangerous behavior. She becomes the moral center of the conversation, guiding public reaction, defining victims and villains. Yet critics point out how selective that intervention feels. When some figures fall, her condemnation is swift and definitive. When others collapse within her orbit, the response is distance, reflection, or silence. Seal's accusation that she knew about Weinstein's conduct for years gains traction now, not because of new evidence, but because of pattern recognition. Rose McGowan's anger resonates for the same reason. Their words echo in a climate where redacted files, sealed agreements, and non-disclosure culture feel less abstract and more operational. That culture is what keeps coming up when people talk about Jeffrey Epstein. The release of heavily blacked out documents reignites a familiar frustration. Too many pages hidden, too many names shielded, too much power clustered at the top. Photographs show elites mingling freely while entire sections of text vanish behind ink. The official explanation is legal necessity. The emotional reaction is disbelief. Oprah's name circulates in the same online ecosystems not as a subject of files, but as a symbol of selective exposure. Insiders say this is how conspiracy ecosystems form, not from proof, but from imbalance. When the same figures appear adjacent to repeated implosions without consequence, imagination fills the gap left by transparency. Behind the scenes, executives are quietly debating whether Oprah's brand is immune or merely delayed. Some point to her ability to frame narratives early, turning potential scrutiny into introspection or empowerment. Others note how criticism tends to fracture rather than consolidate, with accusers isolated and dismissed as bitter or unstable. Katt Williams' recent comments land harder in this environment because they speak to structure, not incident. He describes gatekeeping as a quiet agreement among elites to protect their own leverage. People dismiss him publicly, but privately acknowledge he voices what many fear saying. The idea that influence operates invisibly is not shocking. The idea that it remains untouchable is.
So what is happening in Hollywood? Nobody knows. The worst thing to call somebody is crazy, is dismissive.
What deepens the unease is how often apologies seem to end conversations. When scandals surface around Oprah's projects, responses are immediate, empathetic, and decisive, followed by rapid closure. The school controversy abroad becomes a case study in this. Leadership is removed, statements are made, and the story fades even as rumors linger. Insiders say this creates a template. Acknowledge, empathize, pivot, move on. It works because it satisfies surface accountability while preventing deeper inquiry. The lack of sustained follow-up becomes the real story, but only for those paying attention long enough to notice what never returns. Money also sits quietly beneath all of this. Oprah's influence spans production deals, publishing, streaming partnerships, and philanthropy. That reach means disagreement carries cost, even if unspoken. People who challenge her publicly often find themselves framed as unstable, jealous, or opportunistic. Meanwhile, those who align with her platform receive credibility and protection. Industry sources say this creates a loyalty economy where silence is rewarded and dissent is isolated. Nothing illegal, nothing explicit, just incentives arranged in one direction. When Combs threatens lawsuits and Netflix refuses to flinch, observers note how rare that standoff is. Most entities choose accommodation. Netflix does not. That defiance reframes the moment.
The Justice Department has finally released some of the highly anticipated Epstein files. More than 300,000 pages of documents related to the late convicted offender were made public today. They include photos, flight logs, grand jury testimony, and a lot of heavy redacted.
The pressure intensifies because none of this exists in isolation anymore. Each new scandal drags old ones back into view. Each documentary, filing, or leaked reaction reactivates grievances that never found resolution. Oprah's continued absence from direct consequence becomes the connective tissue between stories that otherwise would remain separate. Insiders say the question is no longer whether allegations are true or false, but whether accountability is evenly applied. The answer to that question determines trust, not just in her, but in the entire ecosystem that elevated her. Now the conversation shifts from curiosity to anticipation. People are watching for reaction, not from Oprah herself, but from those who once defended her, collaborated with her, or benefited from her approval. Silence from allies speaks louder than denial. The industry waits for a fracture point, some moment where protection fails, or a former insider decides the cost of speaking is worth paying. Until then, speculation fills the vacuum. The narrative keeps tightening, fed by absence as much as action.
Well, it is a Pandora's box in a way. Yeah, sure. Because basically, if you go, as my books show, if you go as deep as I went in writing those two books, and you could certainly go deeper, it basically shows that, the world is basically run by a meta cartel.
What rarely makes it into official accounts is the atmosphere surrounding those who say they were harmed while moving through these powerful circles. People close to advocacy groups describe a climate where fear does more work than any contract. Reporting is technically possible, but emotionally unthinkable. Victims believe the moment they speak to authorities, their lives fracture further, jobs evaporate, families are pressured, and private details leak in ways that feel coordinated. The terror is not abstract. It is rooted in stories of people who tried to report misconduct and found themselves isolated, watched, or quietly warned to stop pushing. Industry fixers do not need to threaten directly. The system communicates consequences efficiently. Careers end. Housing becomes unstable. Support networks vanish. The fear is not just of retaliation, but of being erased socially and economically while the accused continue moving freely. What makes this horror harder to confront is how invisible it remains by design. Those with power rarely appear at the point of damage. Layers of intermediaries absorb the risk. Managers, legal teams, charities, foundations, and friendly media voices. When complaints surface, they are redirected into processes that promise care while delivering delay. Paper trails are fragmented. Jurisdictions blur. People who come forward are encouraged to heal privately rather than pursue accountability publicly. Insiders insist this is not accidental. It is a learned survival strategy within elite ecosystems where scandal is treated as a public relations problem rather than a human one. The result is a chilling feedback loop. Each failed attempt to report becomes a cautionary tale for the next person considering it. The most disturbing part is how philanthropy and advocacy are used as insulation. High-profile humanitarian work creates moral credit that shields reputations during moments of scrutiny. When allegations surface, defenders point to schools built, causes funded, lives uplifted. That goodwill functions like a firewall, redirecting suspicion away from individuals and toward faceless systems or bad actors already sacrificed. People close to survivors say this dynamic deepens trauma because it reframes their suffering as inconvenient noise, interrupting a celebrated legacy. The public sees generosity, insiders see leverage. Behind closed doors, victims learn that the more admired someone is, the more dangerous it becomes to challenge them. Silence becomes a survival choice, not a failure of courage. As these patterns come into focus, the story stops being about any single figure and starts revealing a machinery that protects itself. The horror is not only what allegedly happens in private rooms, but what follows afterward. The calculated stillness, the controlled narratives, the quiet understanding that some people exist beyond consequence. Those harmed are left carrying fear, while those adjacent to power continue attending events, launching projects, and shaping culture untouched. The question hanging over all of it is not whether this system exists, but how long it can remain hidden once enough people recognize its shape. So here is where it leaves everyone. If so many careers stall after crossing her, is that coincidence or design? If predators repeatedly appear in her orbit before exposure, is that proximity or warning sign? If accountability stops at the edge of power, who decides where that edge is? And if silence keeps winning, what finally breaks it? Drop your thoughts and theories in the comments, because this story is still bending in real time and people are choosing sides whether they admit it or not.